Today's Tuesday. Oh, 1 second. We'll try. All right, tonight's class is in the schus, in the merit of the memory of Nuriel ben Avraham Jose. Is that right? Jose. Okay. And also that Nuriel's neshama should have an aliyah from the Torah that we learn. And a refuah shlema for Avraham ben Toiva and Yosef Elimelech ben Yehudis. Sha'akadosh Baruch Hu yitin lahem refuas hanefesh refuas haguf hashta bagalov izman kariv v'noimar. Amen. Amen. Last we visited our friends in the Torah. Avraham Avinu had sent Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak. And Yitzchak went to the house of Lavan, made a whole bargain there with the Almighty, that the Almighty should send the right person. And sure enough, Rivkah came out, and they had their exchange, and Rivkah agreed on the spot to go back with Lavan to marry Yitzchak, but they got to now go deal with the family. They got to get the family's blessing. Got to go back and get the family's blessing. And sure enough, we're going to skip over the rest of the story, but the family asked Rivkah, will you go? And that's where we're on. We're on page 119. So this is now right after the story. Eliezer's explained the story, what happened at the well. I waited and I said, I'm going to ask her if she wants a drink. If I could have a drink, she's going to say, I'll give you a drink. I'll give your camels a drink. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. He's now in the tent and he's telling them all of these things. So they eat, they drink. We're on page 119 if anyone wants to follow, about 4 lines down. They ate, they drank, he and the men who were with them, and they spent the night. When they arose the next morning, he said, send me to my master. All right, we spoke last night. Everyone was happy. We agreed. Let's go. Mother said, let the maiden remain with us a year, 10 months. Let's keep her for a little while, and then she can go. What's the rush? What's the rush? He said to them, do not delay me now that Hashem had made my journey successful. Send me, and I will go to my master. And they said, let us call the maiden and ask her decision. They thought for sure she's not going to go against her parents. Not going to go against her mother. Her father's died. That's a whole, we don't have time to go into that, but her father died in this exchange. They called, that's why it's now the mother and the brother. So they called Rivkah and said to her, will you go with this man? They're hoping she's going to say, no, not unless you agree, Mommy. And she said, I'll go. So, okay, she said she'll go. Which is also, you got to get the parents' approval, but you notice the parents are willing to go along with the child. The child wants to do this, okay. So they escorted Rivkah, their sister, and her nurse, as well as Avram's servant and his men. They blessed Rebekah and said to her, our sister, may you come to be thousands of myriads, and may your offspring inherit the gates of its foes. Then Rebekah arose with her maidens. They rode upon the camels and proceeded after the man. The servant took Rebekah and went. Now Isaac came from having gone to Be'er Lahai Roi, for he dwelt in the south country. And Isaac, turning the page, went out to supplicate in the field. Towards evening he went out to pray. And he raised his eyes and saw, and behold, camels were coming. And Rebekah raised her eyes and saw Isaac. And she inclined while upon the camel. And she said to the servant, "Who is that man walking in the field toward us?" She doesn't know who it is, but she already bows. Isaac was a man of such stature that his very presence instilled awe upon those that saw him. She saw this man, she didn't know who it was, she didn't know this was going to be her future husband, and she immediately was taken. She was struck by him, that she bowed down and said, "Who is this person?" And the servant said, "He is my master. This is your future husband." She then took the veil and covered herself. The servant told Isaac all the things he had done. And Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother. He married Rebekah, she became his wife, and he loved her. And thus was Isaac consoled after his mother. Gentlemen, some of you might not be so thrilled tonight, but this is life. Look at the order that the Torah tells us about life. He married her, she became his wife, and he loved her. Not, he loved her, he married her, she became his wife. He loved her, came after he married her. When you decide, again, those of you who are married, okay, just come along for the ride. There'll be relevant information anyway for you.
It does seem she was very good looking though.
But she was covered.
Probably helps. Huh?
But she was covered.
Was she 3?
Her face was covered. That's not our discussion tonight. Because I can tell you, I can promise you this: if you focus on that, nothing of what I say will have any relevance. That's not our discussion tonight. When you decide who to marry, you have to do your due diligence. But what is your due diligence? What is love? And what is marriage? They are not one and the same. One hopefully is the outgrowth of the other, and one should not be the precursor of the latter. You see, marriage is not about love. Sorry to say. Life is about pleasure. The purpose of life is to get pleasure. Period. However, there are many variants in regards to pleasure. There are base level pleasures. Base level pleasures are a nice, thick, juicy steak cooked just the way you like it. I'm not going to say how it should be cooked because everyone's got their own tastes. But a juicy steak the way you like it. That's a very base level pleasure. It is not to be dismissed. But it is not to be the focus and end all of life. Because it is just an introductory level of pleasure. It is nothing more than gratification. There are higher forms of pleasure which make life all the more meaningful and all the more pleasurable. And the only way to achieve any of the higher forms of pleasure is to break out of the self-serving pleasures. When I choose to eat a steak, that is a self-serving pleasure. That's it. I'm not choosing to eat a steak so you can get pleasure. I choose to eat a steak because I enjoy it. You know, it's like someone says, I love fish. Oh, I just love fish. I don't understand how you can utter those words and then eat, but okay. Fish are meant to be looked at. But if you really loved fish, the last thing you would do is eat it. You don't love fish. You love the way eating fish makes you feel. That's what you love. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not belittling it. Well, there's something wrong with that. You shouldn't say I love fish. You say I love meat. But okay. There's nothing belittling it. But understand that it has nothing to do with how you feel about the fish. It has to do with how you feel about yourself. Love is a pleasure as well. And there are two sides of love. There is the pleasure and there is the verb. Because the definition of love in regards to the verb is very different than the pleasure. What is the definition of love? Well, we'll start with the pleasure. Because love is a pleasure. When you're in love, it feels great. And when you're out of love, you know how great love feels because of how miserable you are when you're not in it. And how destructive it is to be lonely and to be in emotional pain. Love is the emotional pleasure I feel when I focus on and identify a person with their virtue. Let's say that again because this is a crucial definition. This is something even you married gentlemen need to understand. And every single one of you is going to hopefully be married, and hopefully every one of you will be a father one day, and you will need to embrace this like you cannot believe until you have children. Love is the emotional pleasure you feel when you focus on, when you identify and focus on a person's virtue. Do an exercise to prove what I'm telling you to demonstrate. Every single one of you, I hope, has a best friend or someone very dear to you that you love tremendously. But let's start with the best friend. Hopefully everyone in this room has a best friend. I want you to think about him for a moment, just a half a second, until you've isolated whoever you want to think about. Okay? Good. Hopefully you all have someone. Put him on a side burner for a moment. Every single one of you, now I want you to think of someone else. Now I want you to think of that person that just drives you insane and annoys the hell out of you. Yeah, I noticed that was much easier for you all to think about. Because every single one of you has someone that does that to you. And if you don't, then you should be sitting here. And I should be listening to you. Because you're in a league beyond my understanding. If you honestly really believe that, then yes. We all have that person that just annoys the hell out of us. Now, here you go. I guarantee you, if you just for a blip of a moment, not that long, for a blip of a second, you already have thought about what it is about that person that annoys you. What is it that they do that just drives you insane? Whether it's the crap they breathe. Yeah, you could be right. It could be that they breathe. It could be that they're sitting in the car with you. Would you stop breathing, please? You're driving me insane. Because the way they breathe drives you nuts, right? Right? Or the way they chew their gum. Or the way they bite their nails. Or the way they smoke. You all got it. I can see. Everyone's got that person that annoys the living daylights out of you, and you know what it is that they do that just when they do it, you just want to throw them out the window. Okay, here you go. Do you all appreciate, I hope you do, that the person that you thought about first, that person that you love, that best friend that gives you so much pleasure, there is someone in the world that thinks about your best friend the way you just thought about that second person. And you know exactly what they think of when they think of your best friend. You know exactly what they think of when they think of your best friend. Oh yeah, I know what they hate about him. I know what they hate about him. Yeah, he does that thing. Yeah, he does that thing when he smokes, he does the thing and it blows it into your face and he's not sensitive. Yeah, I know. Drives people crazy. So how come it doesn't drive you crazy? That's just who he is. He doesn't mean anything by it. And now watch this. There is someone in the world that thinks about the second person you thought about the way you think about the first person. And the very thing that drives you insane, that person that loves that person goes, yeah, that's just who he is. What do you like? He doesn't mean anything by it. So what's the difference? You both look at the two people the exact same way. What's the difference? It's very simple. You dismiss their faults, you forgive their faults, and you identify them with everything else. Whereas the person you despise, you dismiss their values, you dismiss their virtues, and you identify them with their faults. Oh, that's all they are. They don't have anything redeeming about them. They just have that annoying breathing that they do. That's all they do. No, they have nothing virtuous about them. That is the essence of love, gentlemen. The essence of love is whether or not you choose to identify the virtue and forgive the fault, or identify the fault and forgive the virtue. And the greatest proof of this, aside from the best friend, is one day you're going to be married and have children. And every single one of you that's not married yet, if I asked you, do you plan on getting married? And you said yes. If I followed up with the next question, well, do you plan on getting divorced? And every single one would say no. But tragically, you know what the statistic is? That at least 7 out of 10 of you will be divorced. Yep. Now, which one of you that's not married, not the married guys, I don't want to give them an ayin hara, which one of you is willing to admit right now that when you're standing up under the chuppah, you turn to look at your bride and you go, yeah, I give this a 70-30 chance.
It's terrible.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Even 50-50.
You can't say that.
You can't say that. Okay, so how many of you are willing to admit that you're going to stand under the chuppah and go, yeah, 50-50, let's go with it, Rabbi?
Oh my God.
No.
No. Every single one of you is going to be standing under that chuppah and go, oh, I love her. This is forever. This is for eternity. And you all know the sad story. Take a couple, a guy and a girl, that are giddy and laughing and just having a great time and loving each other and just doing, and you look on their Instagram and their Facebook and, oh, this is just a picturesque couple. I want to be like them when I grow up. And the best way to ruin that is have them get married. Just have them get married and destroy that. So to answer the first question that I got off on, and we'll come back to all this, and how does this deal with what we're talking about? You see, love, people say, an absurdity. Don't ever allow anyone to say the following to you without you questioning them. Love is blind. It's an absurdity. It's the biggest lie that's ever been promulgated about love. I'll tell you what they mean. What they mean is what I explained already. What they mean is that you forego the faults of those that you love, while someone else is looking at them going, oh, that's disgusting how they do that all the time. Okay, yeah, they don't mean it. They're not doing it to be egregious. It's just who they are. Okay, so they can't handle sitting, so they sit in a room and they hack. They sit down and the first thing they do, for some reason, the second they walk in the room, they sit down. Like, can't you do that in the bathroom? Yeah, they don't mean anything. That's just who they are. So what they mean when they say love is blind, they mean that you forgo that. But it's not blind, gentlemen. If love is anything, it is a magnifying glass. Love has the ability to zoom in and see every flaw that exists. And I'll prove it to you. If I were to go up to any one of your mothers and ask them the following question. Tell me, is there anything your son should be... Like if your son came to me, he wants to have a meeting with me, and he wants to talk to me about some things that he's struggling with in life, and so I really, in order to give him the best advice possible, I really want to get to know him. Tell me, what do you think there's 10 things that he should be working on in his life right now? 10 character traits that he should really be focused on improving. Well, if it was anything like my mother, she should rest in peace, she would say, only 10? Can I give you 50? Right? Would any of your mothers not say that?
No.
They'd be able to rattle off 10 like that. You don't think so? Give me your mother's number. No. Ezra, hear me out. Hear me out and you'll agree with what I'm saying. Listen carefully, because he's already on to what the next question is. Shh, no, you didn't listen. He wants to prove the rabbi wrong. So he doesn't listen. I'm going to say the question again. Your son came to me and he wants me to give him advice. So in order for me to understand him, to give him the best advice, I want to really understand, what should I tell him to work on? Is there anything he should be working on? Tell me 10 character traits that he should be improving on. 10 flaws that he has. She'd be able to rattle them like that. She wouldn't even have to think about them. 10 faults? Here, boom, 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 boom. Here's 10. Okay? Now I go to that same mother. And I say, you know, your son came to my class for the first time this week. He seems like such a sweet boy. I really would like to get to know him better. Can you tell me about him? Describe him to me. Not one of those things will be on that list. You hear that?
Yeah.
Not one of those things will be on that list. Tell me about your son. Oh, my son? Ba-boom, 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 ba. Oh, he's this. Oh, he's the greatest. They don't understand how good he is at his work. I wish he would leave that place. They don't appreciate him. He's God's gift to humanity, my boy. I think that was Robin Williams who said that it's clear that Jesus was Jewish.
Huh? He stand up in New York.
Yeah, it's clear that he was Jewish.
Chinese.
Like, it's clear he was Jewish. Why? His mother thinks he was a God. he was created by. He's the son of God. You see, love is identifying virtue, but love is a magnifying glass. Love has the ability to see flaws greater than anyone else. And that's why it's so challenging in love to be able to prevent yourself from slipping into focusing on the faults and not identifying a person with their faults. So going back to your question about honoring your mother and father, and then we'll come back to here. Should you ask your parents who you should marry? Absolutely. If you don't, you're a fool. Because nobody knows you better than your parents. Nobody knows your virtues. Nobody knows your faults and your struggles better than your parents. Do they know every aspect about you? Of course not. They don't know what's inside of you. They don't know what dreams, aspirations you have that are deep within you, unless you've shared them. But they only know what the extent of which you shared. But they know you. And they know who would be good for you. They know who would be bad for you. And for you not to solicit their advice in this would be foolish. But to marry someone simply because they said so would also be foolish. And to not marry someone simply because they said so would be foolish. And there'd be no obligation to. As long as you did your due diligence. If you didn't do your due diligence, then you're a fool anyway. Yeah.
With that being said, at the end of the day, it's under our control who we choose to marry. What happens there? I mean, because we are taking our parents' advice,
Yeah.
but at the same time,
It's your responsibility.
What is that?
It's your responsibility. Yeah.
But what if, what I'm trying to ask is like, if it's kind of not, it's not 100% our control because we want to follow what our parents are telling us. So, in a way, we're taking a risk, right?
Mm-hmm. But you're taking a risk with or without them.
Right.
Marriage at some level, it's being recorded here, but oh well. On some level, marriage is a crapshoot. You do your best, you roll the dice, and now you make the most of it.
I was in a relationship a couple of years ago, and I agree with you when you say, I'm not the most, I'm nowhere near the most educated in love, but I agree with you when you say love is blind, because, you know, I didn't see the outside of the relationship, all I saw was the inside.
Yeah, but then there's a flip side though. You see, love's not blind. Love's a magnifying glass. You know what is blind? Really blind? Infatuation. That's blind. Infatuation is blind. Because infatuation has nothing to do with understanding the other person. See, in order to love someone, if the definition of love is identifying a person's virtues, and then you have to know them. You have to know their virtues. You follow? If love is identifying virtues and then focusing on virtues, the only way you can love is if you know the person. Infatuation has nothing to do with knowing the person. What is infatuation? Infatuation is knowing the vision.
The attraction.
That's it. The vision. The fantasy that I've painted about this girl.
So how do you marry someone if you're not in love with them? I get you. Have
Oh, now we'll come back to the story. Because the story seems to contradict what I've said.
So I get you.
I said you had to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
And love only comes from knowing a person.
And if you want to know love,
This story,
there's due diligence.
this story seems to perhaps slightly go against that. Did Yitzchak know her?
No.
Not at all. So, at one point there used to be arranged marriages. Now, I don't want to get into the whole discussion of arranged marriages and the benefit and the value of them. I don't think that they are a wise thing today. But I definitely think that when they were in play, they were the most optimal approach to marriage. I'll say that again. When they were in play, they were the most optimal way to approach marriage. Why? Because twofold. Number one, as I mentioned, no one knows you better than your parents. That's always. That goes for generations. Number two, yeah, but again, I said not today. Number two, they still know you better than anyone. So that's why you should ask their advice. That's why you should ask their advice. Number two, second reason is that it avoids any personal misgivings, misleadings, and any personal biases that a person might have, which could result in infatuation and end up marrying the wrong person, or the reverse, not marrying the right person because of some foolishness and immaturity. Oh, but she's got a thing on her nose. I can't marry her.
Can I go based off attraction?
Yeah. Purely like, oh, I can't marry her. Look at that thing on her nose.
But they also got married young, so they couldn't.
And
decide.
and then there's a third factor. And there's a third factor. And the third factor is now a absolute mandate in marriage is compatibility. Compatibility is not love. We'll get to that. We have a little time left. I don't know if we'll get to magic tonight. But compatibility is not love. Remember, love comes after marriage when done correctly, according to this story. But absolute necessity is compatibility. That wasn't always the case. You have to realize the world we live in has so dramatically and radically changed in regards to not people. People are people, and people will never change. And that is why you can read something written 500 years ago, and if you understand what they're writing, it speaks to you. Because people don't change. Relationships don't change. Human nature doesn't change. We're humans. That will never change. But the way we live our lives has radically changed. Think about it. In terms of just how you spend your day is so tremendously different on a whole plethora of arenas in just the last 50 years, let alone 100 years. If you go back 500 years ago, a couple got married. Do you have any idea how much leisure time they would spend together? Now forget leisure time. How much time, quote unquote, the famous quality time. Nowadays a big buzzword when you get married, you'll hear it. You got to have a date night. Marriage, you got to have a date night with your wife. You got to make sure to fit that in the schedule. Date night. Date night? 500 years ago? You know what a date night was 500 years ago? A date night was the once a week where you actually got to talk to your wife just because. Shabbat probably. The average day, think about it, just one thing. Do you have any idea just the washing machine, how that has changed people's lives? Washing used to be a day. That was washing day. Now you go down to the river, you go to the... It was a whole day. Cooking was a day. They speak about how they used to have an oven, the communal oven, where that's where you would go to bake your bread for the week. We don't understand how life has changed dramatically. So the amount of time that you would spend with your wife outside the duties of marriage, the duties of raising a family, was very minimal. And therefore compatibility was very low on the totem pole of a requirement. And now, you spend time with your wife every day. You're in the home every day. You're communicating every day. There's got to be compatibility. That's why an arranged marriage is not a good option for today, because you don't know if that's there, and that could be destructive. But there's one other aspect in regards to love, gentlemen, and with this we'll wrap up. I told you that love is identifying and focusing on a person's virtue. But there's one other prerequisite, a prerequisite to love. We didn't even speak about the verb love. A prerequisite is a decision. Love is a choice. Listen very carefully. Judaism understands emotions to be either proactive or reactive. We think of emotions, though, as a happening. We identify emotions as something that will happen based on X factor. Take a simple one, happiness. I guarantee many of you think that happiness is dependent upon external factors. When I get that job, I will be happy. When I get that car, I'll be happy. When I get the girlfriend, I'll be happy. When I get a house, I'll be happy. When I get X, when X happens, then I'll be happy. Judaism says that anyone who looks at happiness that way is guaranteed to never be happy. Happiness is a choice. You choose to be happy. You choose to be miserable. That is with every emotion. Every emotion. Take the one emotion that most people think is absolutely not applicable here. Rage. Anger. There's no way that anger is a choice. Sure it is. Anyone who hits the lottery and wants to buy me a Ferrari, I won't stop you. Imagine you get yourself a nice Ferrari. I'm sure you've heard me give this example, and if you hadn't, good. Imagine you get your brand new Ferrari. You get a Ferrari, they're delivering it to your door. You don't have to go to the dealer and pick it up. And they deliver the Ferrari, they drop it off. It's got 4 miles on it, on the odometer. Beautiful. You get in, you got to take it for a spin. So where do you want to take it? You're not going to drive around it. You want to get it on the freeway, see what it can do, get in the canyon, find a canyon that's not occupied, see what it can do. But to get there, you got to go through the residential area. Some stop signs, some red lights. Now you just got it. You know very well that when that light turns yellow, you could easily fly through there without it turning red. It's a Ferrari, but you just got it. So you don't want to take any chances that some idiot's going to jump the gun on his green light and hit you. You just got it. So the first day, you're going to wait till you get to the open road. So the light turns yellow, and you slow down to stop. And you stop right as it turns red. And sure enough, some idiot hits you from behind. Your brand new Ferrari hits you from behind. Like, what? And before you can get your composure to turn around to see who this idiot is, he backs up and hits you again. I'm going to kill this guy.
Seems like a hater.
You open the door, and he does it a third time.
Definitely hate it.
Now it's rage. Now, you're not just going to kill him. You're going to hurt him. It's going to be a slow death. Okay? You jump out of your Ferrari, and parked behind you is a pickup truck with 3 hillbillies from Tennessee with a sawed-off shotgun on the dashboard. Tell me instantaneously what happens to the rage.
Back in the car.
Back in the car? Nope. You back up, you say, I'm sorry I was in your way. Please, would you like to go? Now, you know what? Just drive over it. Just go on. I'm sorry. I should have ran the red light. I apologize. Now, you might think that the only reason the rage disappeared is because I pictured the shotgun. No. The rage disappeared because you immediately realized in the blip of a second that the rage is counterproductive. It's going to get you killed. But it is not the fear. It's not the gun that got rid of it. It's the realization that it's counterproductive. Because I'll give you another example to demonstrate. But I wanted to get you in the flavor of rage. You go to New York. You're visiting New York. You're walking through Manhattan, and it's winter. You guys don't even know what winter is. Winter in New York is where your bones actually hurt. It hurts. Just the cold hurts. Okay? And you're walking along, and your shoe is untied. So you got to bend over and tie your shoe. You're not going to bend over on a sidewalk in New York because people will just walk into you. So you move to the side. You figure you move to the side, you're out of the way, you're safe. You bend over to tie your shoe, and sure enough, someone bumps into you. But because you're bending over to tie your shoe, you lose your balance, and you fall and scrape your forehead. Remember, it's winter. Your bones hurt from the cold. How do you think that scrape against the brownstone feels? Oh, you see stars. Rage. What's wrong with this idiot? Can't you see what you're doing? What are you, blind? And you stand up, and he's blind. Where's the rage? Gone. Gone. Why? It's counterproductive. Love is an emotion. And therefore, just like every emotion, love is a choice. You can choose to see the faults, or you can choose to see the virtue. And there is only one way that forces you to make that choice, and that's called commitment. Without commitment, nothing forces you to make that choice. If I ask every single one of you the following question, the answer will be resounding yes. If you have children, are you going to love them?
Yes.
Yeah, of course you will. But how do you know they're not going to be the brat down the street?
I want that.
You want the brat down the street, yeah, until he's living in your house.
Yeah.
You want the comedy of it, but you want to be able to turn it on and off. Because when I tell him to do something, no, now's not the time to be the brat. But they don't know how to turn it off and on. So how do you know you're going to love them? See, people fall out of love with their spouses. Very few people fall out of love with their children. Why? Because it's a decision you made right now. You've decided. It doesn't matter who my kid is. I'll love them.
What about the other way around, Rabbi?
That's a different discussion. You didn't choose your parents. But you should make that choice as well. It's a whole different discussion. Every single one of you should choose to love your parents, just like you should choose to love your spouse, just like you will choose to love your children. But it's a choice. And that's why it's this order. Yitzchak married her. She became his wife. She's my wife. By definition, I have to choose to love her. It's done. She's my wife. I love her. And now I will find virtue.
Isn't that saying that he wasn't in love when he saw her though?
How could he? He didn't know her.
But wouldn't there
That's the whole point. If he had said he was in love with her, he would have been infatuated with her.
Wouldn't there be instances where they follow that, but then once they're in, it's just everything goes like nothing
Yeah.
goes right?
Right, that's life. And just because that way, your kid might be the brat down the street.
So where
You know what I'm saying?
And you still got to make the choice to love them.
What I'm saying is like, isn't it okay to like divorce or separate? Like, why would you want to?
Okay, so with that, we'll stop.
Where
So,
does compromise come from?
613 mitzvahs in the Torah. 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. One of those mitzvahs is to get married and have children. One of those 613 mitzvahs is to get a divorce.
to give a get?
Mitzvah. To divorce.
To give a get or to get a divorce?
Okay? It's a mitzvah. Now, but 1 second, does that mean I'm supposed to get divorced? No. That means the Torah is telling you that yes, there are times where you should get divorced. You should get divorced. But you better know when that is. So here you go. Here you go. She's got the thingy on the nose. Remember I said, oh, I can't marry her. She's got the thingy on the nose. Now what happens if you marry her and 10 years into the marriage, she gets a thingy on the nose? Can you believe this? I remember I was asked to go out with that girl and I showed up and she had the thingy on their nose. I'm like, oh God, how long do I have to sit here with her? All right, you know what? I'll take her to dinner and halfway through dinner, I got a stomach ache and I'm so sorry. I got to take you home. I don't feel good. And then there's no second date. Why? Because she's got the thingy on her nose. But now you find the girl with the no thingy on the nose. Oh, she's beautiful. Mom and dad love her. She's Persian, this, that, the other. And 10 years into the marriage, she gets a thingy on the nose. Now what? Well, I got to get rid of her. She's got the thingy on her nose. I wouldn't go out with the other girl. She had to. It's only fair. You got to be fair. Okay, you think that's funny? Happens all the time, but let me show you the following. Let's say you actually say, yeah, you should divorce her if she gets a thingy on her nose. And we're saying a thingy could be anything. By the way, it's not just a thingy on the nose. It could be that she doesn't cook the way I thought she was going to cook. It could be that she doesn't do this the way I thought she was going to do that. All right. You're 40 years old. And you get arthritis in your left hand. And it just starts to look a little weird. And remember when you were 20 and you go to shake a hand with some guy who had a weird hand, you go, oh, what's wrong with his hand? Well, now you're that guy with the weird hand. So what do? Chop it off?
Stay with that.
No, you don't chop it off. There's only one time you chop off that hand. When? Gangrene. Gangrene. Where if I don't chop this hand off, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to die. I will literally die if I don't chop this hand off. That's marriage. I got to divorce this wife. Why? Because if I don't, I will die. I will spiritually, emotionally die. Then you get a divorce. And it's a mitzvah. But anything less than that, then you're just immature.
Would it be a concern of, well, off topic?
Anything less than that, you're immature.
Would it be an avera if, let's say, the lady needs to chop off her hand, but the husband's not giving the get? How does that work? Because the husband.
It's a separate discussion, but he should.
But there are situations.
There are situations, and they're wrong. And their rabbis are trying to do something about it. Yeah. All right, gentlemen, thanks.
In the birthday album, it says the strong man controls his emotion.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what it's saying, like controlling?
That's different. That's his desire, his yetzer.
So all 613, we don't have to do all of them.
Acceleration.
Not you don't have to, you can't.
Okay.
You can't do all of it.
So when someone says they keep all the Torah.